Hi everyone. So nice to be here, and I'm glad you guys are all here. This is strange, walking back and forth in this little area. I teach yoga, so this is sometimes how I set up the yoga classes. They all kind of look in the middle, but I don't do a lot of walking back and forth. So before I start, I want to start on a different note before we get into what I do and who I am and what you guys are going to do. But I was privy to a really wonderful talk yesterday, and it was put on by Women's Week, which is held by the Chamber of Commerce. And we had a great guest. And does anyone here, have you done education on South Africa before? Have you learned a little bit about what apartheid was in the past?
Yeah.
The inequality between races, black and white, in South Africa. So there is a bishop named Bishop Desmond Tutu. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, have you heard that name before? That's okay. He was a very strong proponent for wiping out apartheid, and I got the pleasure of listening to his daughter yesterday. So the message I feel compelled to share with you all, because it's not just me who should listen to this and have the opportunity, but I want you all also to know what I learned yesterday, or what I heard. And her message was, she would like to wipe out, racism, sexism. She'd like to bring in equality. They never thought they had a future in South Africa if you were black. You went to school and you got grades, but what for? Because you're never going to become anything. There's nothing to move into, no positions to get in the government, no positions in business, particularly if you're a woman, but anyone, men and women. So what was the point of trying in school? Nothing to aspire to. Well, she and her family dreamed that one day there would be a South Africa where everybody could aspire to something. And that was a huge, crazy dream that nobody thought could possibly be true, year after year in this very strong government. And so her message was dream big, because what happened is, over time, eventually, apartheid got wiped out. Apartheid became something of the past. These people began to know a new future, which was equality and opportunities. So that was a huge dream that people would tell her, you're nuts, that'll never happen, don't bother. But the message is, dream huge. Just dream your dreams huge. Whatever they are, if people tell you, that's ridiculous, you'll never get to that, or nobody does that, or people, from where you are, your age, race, color, background, etc., those kind of people don't do these things, don't listen. Just keep going after your dreams. So, that's more important than anything I'm going to teach you about sports psychology. The most important thing is whatever your dream is, dream it, keep dreaming it, go after it. It can happen. It can be your tomorrow. So with that said, you guys work hard in school, because you do have opportunity to aspire to different things that are available. And I'll present to you one of the things that are available, a career path that I chose. So thanks for having me today. My name's Anna Weltman. I have a company called Top Performance Consulting. You can see a little bit here. And what I do is sports psychology. Does anybody, you've all had a sports psychology mini class, right? Sort of. Did you hear the word visualization, imagery, distraction control, okay, routines, rituals? Well, okay, so you got a basic idea, and I want to give a little bit of a differentiator between what sports psychology is and what it isn't. First of all, just a real quick story about me. I golfed since I was 7. I really hated it because I got dragged out to the golf course. But eventually I started to grow into it, and then I became a teacher, actually. I taught golf. And teaching it became really boring, because all you do is you teach people this all day long. This, and all different variations depending on the person, and that can get kind of boring. And honestly, didn't pay very well, and I just didn't feel like I was using my brain very much. I love psychology. I wanted to get into people's heads and understand what they were thinking and feeling when they were in difficult situations. So I kind of moved from teaching on the tee to attempting to teach people the mental side of the game of golf. Does anyone play golf here? It's a brainy sport, and it can get to you, and the brain stuff can get in the way, and then it can flare up your emotions. And is anyone throwing their club? I won't tell anyone. Okay. You can do it as long as you don't hit anyone with the club. But that's it. I coached gymnastics for many years. I coached golf. I now coach triathlon, some surfing to kids in camps and things like that. But that's sort of my background, was coaching, teaching, helping you learn the skills, but a little deeper than just the skills. So sports psychology goes a little deeper than making sure you can throw the basket or hit the ball. So I kind of moved into computers for a short duration, well, 10 years or so, because I wanted to come to the United States. I'm not from here. And that was a way to get in and get a job, because they needed a lot of people in Silicon Valley at the time. So I began a career sort of using the psychology as a business analyst, and I always wanted to teach, again, the sports psychology. So did a little spin around, and that's what's my last line here is, you might find that as you're going through your career, your life after high school, maybe taking college, maybe going right to work, moving up in your job, that you want to do something else, and you think, well, I've come this far, I don't know about changing now. Well, change, follow your heart. That's my message to you. And don't ever be afraid to say, oh, I should have done that, I've spent a lot of years doing this, I'm going to go back now and do it. Go ahead and do it, because when your heart's in what you do, you're going to do a better job. You're going to find more contacts, you're going to be more into it, you're going to do your, you do your homework much more excitedly in the courses you like. It's a drag to do your homework in the courses you don't like. And the same thing's going to happen in work. If you're doing a job that you don't like, I didn't dislike computers completely, but I don't like sitting in a room with artificial air and behind a screen all day long. And that's the part I kind of felt like I was shrinking myself and not using all of me. So I had to make a change. So don't feel like you're stuck in something. And even if you spend a long time building up in something and you decide it's time for a change, that's going to happen in your lives. And these days people stay in a job a couple of years, maybe even that, and jump around a lot. If you're in sports psychology as a profession, you could jump to teaching, you could jump to coaching athletes one-on-one, you could work with other coaches and train. There's a lot of things you can do within it, so you can always explore within your field. So I encourage you to do that, not to be stuck, not to feel stuck. And if you ever feel stuck, stand up and go. That's my advice. So I can switch that to the next one. So sports psychology or sports medicine. So did you guys have a class on sports medicine?
This is sports medicine.
This is your sports medicine class. So
Yeah.
you guys are learning about injury or rehab or anything to do with body parts that are not moving right after sports. Okay, so psychology comes into it. I guess you've already had the introduction of how psychology comes into here, but it does apply to a lot of the same things. So if you're working with someone who's rehabbing, people go to rehab after they have an injury, and then they never do the exercises at home. They just get the physical therapist to move them around a lot, and then they don't do anything for a week, and they come back, or for 3 days, and they come back with the same problem. So physical therapists don't like that, and athletic trainers don't like that when you don't do your homework. That's where sports psychologist comes in. They would be working with you hand in hand, like essentially holding hand, making sure that person does their homework, their exercises, and there's a few skills you can do as well to help yourself get better when you're rehabbing. All the way from, okay, let's visualize our cells repairing themselves, and spending a minute just with my eyes closed, seeing cells in my mind repairing themselves, and that's sort of a tactic that some people use. And others are writing out your goals, making sure that you know each day where you want to get to. And the more you write out your goals, you'll get to different levels of injury rehab or healing. So, let's see, we'll go to the next one. Here are some of the things that sports psychology is. Is there anything on here that you haven't talked about in your class? These are going to be things that you work with athletes, but they're also things you need to have in yourself. So there are also things you have to work on every day, and the field of psychology is funny. Almost every psychologist is in there because they need help. They are trying to help themselves understand things. They're working on some specific challenge, or they've encountered a challenge that made them realize that other people might have the same thing, and maybe my experience can help you. So those are all different things, and that's a really tiny list of what there really is. Of what you can measure yourself in right now and see that you're capable of doing right now. Dealing effectively with people, I would say, is probably the most important skill in every field that you're going to consider. Keep that in mind. I would highly recommend learning negotiation strategies. There's a lot of good books out there. Audio books are great if you drive. If you're at home listening to a computer, you can just listen to that and do something else at the same time. But anything on negotiation strategies and dealing with other people, communicating with other people, speaking, writing them, and answering them. But the biggest skill you're going to need in sports psych, in any psych, does anyone have a guess what it is? The most important skill when you are counseling others. Patience is a good skill. Something a little more, yes? Listening, absolutely. And like all through life, I encounter people at different stages of being able to listen. And you guys are all listening really, really well right now. Listening also involves not hearing your own voice inside, going, okay, what am I going to ask her next? Listening is hearing me say my sentence and then addressing my sentence. And then if you're really, really dying to say something, because usually when I talk to someone, I just want to get my words out too. You find a really nice crafty way of sending them the sentence you want them to hear, but it addresses what they just said, so they don't feel like you're ignoring them. Because I hate it when someone is, okay, so Anna, what do you do? And I start to talk and they're already like, well, okay, I was thinking about something else and maybe we should go somewhere else, and I'm like halfway out getting my name out. So you need to learn how to listen, and that'll serve you everywhere in life. It'll serve you, and it'll make you more patient, because if it's hard to listen because someone speaks too slowly or they're having trouble getting the words out or something, you can monitor yourself and grow your own patience. So that's also a big part of sports psychology, is being patient and listening. So thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next one. So I mentioned goal setting. Does anyone here do any goal setting for your studies, for your homework? Anyone? Pretty much most of you? Okay. Someone want to throw out one of their methods? What do you do? Yes?
I have a big mirror in my room, and I put sticky notes on my mirror, and once I recycle, I take it off of my mirror, so I'm seeing it every day, so
Yeah.
it reminds me to focus on it, and once I achieve it,
Awesome. Nice. Anyone else do that? I do that. I also put sticky notes here and there that give me a little encouragement or something. So if I, don't listen to the naysayers or something like that, I put that on a whiteboard at my room, or anywhere in the bathroom window, mirror, sorry, in the front dashboard of my car, different places where I spend a lot of time. So just little messages and reminders. Any other method? Any other goal setting methods? So some of the oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I put a planner that I write down what I need to do for the week, and all the goals, I'll write down the goals for what I want to do.
And when you reach them, do you just tick them or something? Or?
Yeah, I just check it off.
Yeah, great, check it off. What does it feel like when you check it off? Good.
Yeah.
If you have 10 of them and you get through a lot of heavy work this week, and you look at the end of the week and there's 2 left or there's none left, hopefully, that's a really good feeling. It's extremely encouraging. It's really, it'll get you going to do it again and again, as long as you keep it up, just like any other practice.
I was going to share that I do a list, and I love crossing up things off
Yeah,
the list.
yeah.
There's my thing to do, and then
Yeah.
sometimes when I'm feeling a little less motivated, I'll even put wake up and get dressed today. Cool, yep, did it.
Those are
accomplished. Some days you need a little more
Seriously, there's some days you don't wanna, the bed is comfortable and nothing out there looks like it's gonna go right, so you'd rather stay in bed. Another cool thing to do is if you have, something like this, the calendar or anything that has little small squares, lines with squares, and you put an X each day when you did something. So if I wanna do exercise every day, I have my exercise, column, and then I put X for each day. And then when I look at the end of the month and I see a lot of X's or a few X's, it really gives me a feeling like, oh my God, I really did it. Okay, going for the next month. Or, okay, I better work on that. I got 2 X's in the whole month. So here's some of the things that in athletes' lives, it's really helpful to teach them. So if you can get it, if you can get this method of your own, whichever method you like the best, underway, even if it's a very simple method, teach it to others. And this will help them because when let's say you're striving to get to a competition, whether it's Olympics or some other level, you will need to have goal setting and you'll need to have milestones. Is there any questions about this? Because it's probably what you guys do for school in some way or another, but it's a very big part of counseling people and counseling athletes. I'm gonna move on and then we can come back for more questions. So some other things that you're gonna do with athletes is not just work with the athletes, you're going to be working with their coaches, you're gonna be working with their parents, if they're kids. And you will notice that coaches tend to, they either work well with you as a sports psychologist providing extra information for the athlete, or they don't work well with you. So you're gonna have to step around them really carefully and see whose territory is whose. So that's sort of the finesse of being a sports psychologist, is where do you fit in exactly. If the coach asks you to join them, great, you're in and they need you and they recognize how you can help. And you're gonna be helping in a different way. You're gonna help athletes who don't wanna talk to their coach about problems they're having, but they'll talk to you. And you're gonna also talk to groups, the whole team sometimes, about team cohesion, where the coach only has, you guys learned a small amount of sports psychology, but there's a huge amount. But every coach knows a small amount. But if you guys become specialized in this, you'll have so much resource for the coach that they don't have time to look up and learn themselves. So you can just offer a lot of information. When you deal with parents, if you're going to work with individual young kids in their sports, the parents, what do you think is the main driver of a kid in sports? Kids who are their parents, and how? Like in what way? Is there? They make you play. Yes.
Parents saying like pushing you to do your best and be like, you got this, like don't stop.
Yeah. So they motivate you very positively. Sometimes they are a little bit too pushy. So they want to play soccer, but they can't. So their son is playing soccer, so that kid better play soccer every day, and he better play well. And they get really upset when he misses something, and then the parent exhibits crazy behavior on the sidelines, and then guess who copies that? The 7-year-old is going to learn that, and that's. So then we're not really dealing with the child anymore. We're dealing with the parent. So that can come up. And then if you have higher level athletes who are almost adult and they don't need their parents to make decisions for them, they have got schedules, they've got full plate, and you need to fit in and see how you can give them really quick, helpful interventions. One of the main things that I would tell people before competition is don't change anything. So that if you're all involved in sports, here's some tips for you also. If you're going to a competitive situation where you normally train you're just in practice, don't change anything from your practice when you get to race day or when you get to competitive competition day. So if you've got a certain set of clothing that you wear, don't change it up because you might have a malfunction. I should have brought you the slide of the skaters, the French skaters. Did anyone see that in the Olympics? Where she lost part of her dress. And they really dealt with that in a very resilient way because it's very embarrassing. But I'm sure they wore that dress in practice. Those things happen. But try to keep everything the same for race day and learn about your competition. But when you're about to race against them, forget about them. same if you're on a team, same if you're an individual. And that goes for choosing your career. You're gonna see, oh my God, there's a lot of competitors out there. I'm not the only one who's interested in sports psychology. What am I gonna do with everyone else who does this? Or they're gonna get to athletes before I get to them. Learn everything you can about your competitors. When you start a business or when you start to work for someone, you're gonna learn about competition and who's out there. But then you need to close back in and narrow down your focus to just what you're doing. And then don't worry about your competitors. So this applies to you and to your athletes. And so essentially, my job as a sports psychologist is to find out what's in your head. What's going on in your mind, in your heart? What are you thinking about? How come you are, enjoying this or not enjoying this? How come you are thinking of so many things when you need to be learning how to do one thing right in front of you? Okay, so I'll switch that. And focus is another area of sports psychology. Let's do a real quick exercise. I'm not sure where I am on time.
You're fine.
Good?
40
Okay.
minutes, you're good.
Okay. You're in rows, right? So you're by yourself in a row. 1, 2, 3. Can you just join those two? And then can you five make a group? And you can stay where you are. You can. I want at least 3 or 4 people in a group, and then I want one person to be that person who's going to count backwards out loud from 100 to 0. And I want everyone else in the group to be talking to them, asking them questions, saying things to them like, oh, I noticed that you're wearing an SDSU sweatshirt. Oh my God, your eyes are... And talk about them, at them, try to get their attention, try to distract them. So you can turn around, try that. The person starting... Hang on. I'm going to say start. 1 second. Wait a sec. Wait. I'm sorry. I'm going to say start, and then when I say start, the person you elect to count is going to start counting backwards. You have a question? Yes, count out loud, please. Ready, and start. Count. Did anybody get down to 0 or 1?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. Yes. How difficult was that?
Very difficult.
That's distraction control. That is so yes, right. All right. I did my best to cut in there. So that is one of the, it's kind of fun, but it is a really helpful exercise to help you zoom back inwards and listen to yourself and focus on your one thing and forget about everything around you. And it'll be really helpful for you in school. Like if you've got a lot of noise going on around you, you need to focus on a project or something, try just doing this exercise with your friends a couple of times, and then you should probably sort of instill that into yourselves. So it's not something that we do at one time and you've got it. It's not gonna happen that easily again next time either. So try to do this a couple of times with friends, with groups, and practice it. And and these types of things are what we practice with athletes. They're crazy, they're silly. Sometimes they take an athlete into the water, they're afraid of swimming in open water. And they've never swum with all the, the surge and whatnot. So we go to the water this deep, and then we do our swimming strokes right there while we're standing. And they are in an area where they're getting a simulation, and they're feeling the water, and they can sort of see it splashing around them. And they're doing what they normally do, and they're really good swimmers, but they've never swum in open water. Then, when they're comfortable with that, we go a little deeper. They go up to here, they go up to here. At some point, they're up to the chest, where they can actually put their head in the water and do their swim stroke, which they've done a million times in pool. And they're in water that they can feel the surge, and they can feel it move under their feet, and they're getting more and more comfortable with that. So those are some of and they're fun. I mean, those are fun things to do, but it takes practice. So some of these things are just practice. Here's some other areas of sports psychology. Visualization. So if you just go out and climb a mountain, that's fine, but if you visualize that every day for 3 weeks, every day you spend 5 minutes, you lie on your back, your eyes closed, and you see yourself climbing the mountain. When you get there, you're gonna have a sense of familiarity, and you're gonna be better and faster than if you didn't do it. So they use that a lot. Self-talk. Do you know what self-talk is? What's an example of negative self-talk?
You can't do this.
But say it to yourself, like, I really suck at this. It's not gonna go over well. That's negative. What's positive?
I can do this.
Okay, but try to sound a little more. I can do this. That's not positive self-talk. It's like, I know I got this. I'm gonna go and do this. And just have a little more emotion in your talk. So these are some things that we do right before you go and play your game or play your sport. So keep it positive when you can. There are some times when you want to have negative self-talk. Anyone have an idea of when that might be? Negative self-talk? If you're injured? In which regard?
Sort of like rehab process. I'll never be as good as I was.
Right, okay, and that's really important in rehab, because that's where you can really use a sports psychologist to help you get through rehab, and you can change and reframe those thoughts, reframe those words and those sentences. A reframe means I can't do it right now. That's a reframe. Right now my leg's in a cast, I obviously can't run, but as soon as I get out of this cast, I can run again. That's a reframe. All right, and then you want to be able to interpret how people feel. So I'm looking at each of you, and I can see sort of, is anybody here nervous? Not really. Everybody's pretty relaxed looking. But I can also see different levels of attentiveness, and I can see different levels of focus. And you want to be able to see that in your athletes. And don't forget, sports psychology isn't only for athletes. You can use the approach and the skills with business people, military, people who are just in fitness and trying to work on a fitness plan, lose weight, stop smoking, drug addiction, rehab, that sort of thing. Or reaching anybody who is not looking like they're feeling involved, or they're, when you meet other kids who are kind of a little distant, or they don't feel like they're connected, or they don't feel like they're doing well, you can reach out to them with these same principles and help anyone. Give them a couple of ideas of how to reframe the way they see their future, and just help people out. All right, I'll move to the next one, please. So what do you need to do this? Any health science is good. You guys are all in health science. You don't have to go as far as a master's degree, but you might want to, so you can learn additional stuff. But the sports psychology is sometimes housed in university under a sports type of course of study, and sometimes under psychology. In psychology, you might get into a psychology department, and it's social psych. health psych, exercise psych, performance psych, not necessarily sports. And then you might incorporate sports psych as a specialty, or you might go into the human kinetics or kinesiology departments and get a specialty of sports psychology. So you'll see different universities have different programs. Some of them are really focused on research, and you'll be researching and you may be teaching, but you'll be supporting other people's research. And some of them are focused on applied, where you'll actually go out and treat athletes. And some of those programs are business-based, so they'll give you how to start a business, how to run a business, and then here's where you specialize in counseling, consulting, sports psychology, etc. And one other thing I want to tell you is there is a good book out. I don't know if you've let everyone know about that. What grade are you guys in? 11? Or 12. 12? Okay. I don't see it there, but there is a really excellent book, and I can send you the link, for all the universities worldwide, particularly US and Canada, where I'm from, by the way, if you haven't noticed, that interprets every program for sports psychology, what it requires, where it's housed, what their program involves, what it costs, and then gives you contact info. And they come out with that every year, and they update it. So it's about this thick. There's a lot of stuff out there. So there's a lot of, I went through the entire book for about a year trying to choose a program, and I ended up choosing San Diego State U. But when I got into school, they dropped the program. They had budget cuts, so they dropped the program, professors, no intake, no courses after the first semester. So I had to run around San Diego trying to find another university and finish my studies. And I'm an international student at the time, so it was interesting. So the master's degree, I don't know what they cost. It can be anywhere from, if you get grants and if you get some scholarship money, if you get some assistance, and it can go up to pretty expensive on those private schools. But there's some pretty good programs and some good professors in those schools. So I could also send you a list of, where I have, I don't know if you covered that in your class. But, there's an association called the American Association of Sports Psychology, ASP, and they are in the process of sort of revamping what they call a certified consultant. They have already set out some requirements, certain coursework and certain things you have to pass for them, amount of supervised practice and so on, but they're revamping it, and there's a lot of politics in there. So just tell you, nobody still understands what sports psychology is to this day. So people in the field are still fighting about what it is and what it isn't, who's really a sports psychologist and who's just a fake, or who's just sort of whatever. So it is a little bit of a messy field. So just be prepared for that. They're not the only certifying body. You can go with the International Sports Psychology Association, which I recommend. You get more traveling in the world too that way. And here is just something I wanted you to think about. Can everyone read that? Is it big enough? So I probably spent 50 grand on my education. And my first gig, I had a professional skateboarder, and I charged $90 an hour for talking with him because I was brand new. Well, now I can charge a couple $100 an hour, but if you spend that much money and you spend your first year with 1 or 2 clients, and then maybe 3 or 4, and then maybe you find one more, you're not getting a great return on your investment quickly. If you get hired right away into a company or school or whatever, and I'll get into that in a second, you're still getting a fairly low return. You're not making your money back. But if you go into real estate, which was really a bummer for me because I thought, oh my God, I saw some friends go into real estate. They paid no more than a couple $100, and then they sold a house and they came home with a couple $1,000. So I was like, oh my God. What did I do? So I'm just telling you guys that to keep, to not fall into one line of thinking. Don't be naive. Don't be closed. Be open to everything there is there. And then if it's in your heart to do it, as I said earlier, you will be way more into it, and you'll find ways to make it work, to make money, to make connections. If that's really your thing in anything, whether it's hairdressing or computer programming, If that's really your thing, you're gonna doing that in your spare time because you love it. You're gonna spend your free moments doing that. And then your boss is gonna love you. But if you really have to force yourself to learn extra stuff because you don't really like the field, you're replaceable and you won't be doing yourself a service. You will not be enjoying your life. And I really recommend you pick a job, a career, a skill in the world that you love. And it's worth it. And even if it doesn't pay so much at the beginning, because here I am, I'm not doing this. Could be if I want to make money, but I'm not. So I'm working it, I'm building it up, and I love it. So that's why I stay in it and I put up with the hardship. But I wouldn't do that if I was in computer programming. I'd be like, no, I'm not going to learn another language in my spare time. What are you, crazy? So we can switch to the next one. And this is where you will find work, potentially schools, all the way up through high school, college, different sports clubs. Typically, they don't hire you full-time, so you'll be contracting with them to talk to their students after school and whatnot, or during their class, but that's it. So it's not full-time. If you get on a professional team, yes, you might get a full-time good gig. You get an Olympic Training Center, you would have a nice full-time gig. They have pretty strict requirements, the Olympic Training Center. You need to be certified with ASP, and you need to be, etc., from a accredited school, things like that. So some of the pitfalls along the way were my school wasn't accredited, so it closed the doors on the VA, closed the doors on teaching in certain universities. So, and then elite level sports clubs and fitness centers. And then, if you go into business, if you go into practice for yourself, the next slide will, I think, no, that's not, well, if you go into business for yourself, okay? A lot of your days are going to be spent marketing and trying to make sales or trying to find clients. They're not going to be spent doing sports psychology. It's going to take a lot of effort to go through a 7-hour day of trying to get yourself networking and known and meet people and talk everywhere and find clients. And at the end of your day, you're still going to need a couple hours to learn your trade. So it's business for yourself is very tough. And have you had entrepreneur courses already or courses? Okay. Is anyone here interested in working for themselves, being an entrepreneur, starting up a new business, or do you have an idea in your head that might go somewhere? Not yet. If you ever do. It's rewarding and it is very challenging. Those are really good qualities to develop if you want to be in sports psychology, because you could pass that on to your athletes because you've done it yourself. So always make sure you're getting everything you need, rest, good diet, try to be good to your, I like this skeleton here, try to have a nice straight spine whenever you can, all of those of you who are like this now, and you'll last longer. And that's it. So I think there's one more. Right, if people tell you you can't, I already told you this at the beginning of the class, if people tell you you can't do something, just don't listen to them. This is, speak with counselors and resources who can help you with what is really viable and what's not. But if people are just, they don't want to make the effort themselves. I mean, this is what I didn't learn until I was much older, and I was wondering why people were always telling me, why are you moving out of Canada? Why are you living in another country? Who does that? Why would you want to do that? Those are the people who would have kept me back if I listened to them. But then I meet other people who've done what I've done, and it's normal. Why not? So it depends who you hang around with. And don't let anyone tell you you can't do anything, in anything at all. Just don't let anyone tell you you can't. And then I was just coming back here a little bit. These are some of the things that are going to get in your way. It's not a lot of full-time work. And the more you fall into this, people are going to come to you and say, see, it's super hard. Why are you doing this to yourself? Why do you keep trying? Why don't you just turn around and go work for, I don't know, whatever, 7-Eleven or something? So, and by the way, master's degree students out of SDSU, there was a percentage quoted of how many of them actually end up working at 7-Eleven with a master's degree in math or science. It's really sad. So don't let it be you. Unless you own the 7-Eleven. You can hire 10 people. That's cool. No, it's not that it's uncool to work there, but if you're going to go that that direction and get the degree and pound information into your head for another 4 years and another 4 years, then use that resilience and perseverance to go find a really good, fulfilling job. I think that's it. Let's see what else there is. Yeah, this is just my information about me. You're welcome to take a photo of that if you like, and you can contact me anytime, ask me any questions. And so it's open to questions. How much time do we have for questions?
It's 20, we wrote down a lot of questions.
Oh,
for
good.
you.
Oh, awesome. Okay, yes.
Why did you leave Canada to do work here?
Because the weather. I live in Ottawa. It's freezing, so they're still having winter. And, you know, we're getting like one of our 4 days of rain here. So that was pretty much it. Yeah. And actually, I did have to leave California to go back to take care of one of my parents who was sick for a couple of years. So I had a practice here, and then I uprooted it and I went back and I spent 4 years there and lost pretty much connection with all my contacts and even some clients. Some clients I continued to see them on Skype, so you can work on Skype. And then I came back and tried to reestablish again. Anyone else? Yes.
What's like the biggest setback you've ever faced?
In life or in this in the field?
In life.
Let's see. Setback. Well, I think that was one of them. Was having momentum growing a business that was very hard to do against all immigration and all kinds of people, and then having to realize you're doing well, and it's like, okay, but now I have to turn around and walk away. So that was, actually life hasn't stopped having setbacks in my life, so it's kind of, that's the chosen one right now. But, yeah. How about, what's the biggest setback you've ever had?
I don't think I've had one yet.
Okay. Well, yes.
Is it more difficult to work with, like, big teams compared to individual athletes?
There's a lot of travel with teams. The teams also have the ability to try you out for a little while, and then they don't like you, they'll fire you. So some sports psychologists get fired from a lot of teams, but they just keep going. So getting fired isn't the end of the world ever. But you're not as much in control. You know, they decide when you work, they decide if you come or go. And then you've got a whole team to deal with depending on who's on the team. So there's team cohesion issues, and then there's individual issues of each person on the team. Yes?
So when you decided that you no longer wanted to pursue your past career,
Yeah.
what was the process of going back to school and doing it?
Interesting question and interesting potential. It could happen to any of you. I don't know where you're all going to be in a couple of years, but I was finishing up my career in IBM and I lived in the Middle East, and I was deciding that that was enough of computers. I was going to go back to sports psychology, so I spent half a year or so with that book and learning everything about all the institutions back in North America and around the world a little bit. Then I sent out I didn't know if that would be the right field, so here's a great idea you guys can do. I sent out a letter to the people who know me the best, like really, really close relatives, best friends, and anyone else who knows me really well, but who is not just going to cheer for me, but they're going to be direct to me and speak to me straight. And I said, so out of these 5 things, what do you see me most doing well? And I gave them these 10 or 12 questions, kind of to evaluate me, and I would take their evaluations, do you see me as this kind of person or that kind of person? So I can get an exterior perspective. Then I would give some weight to each of the questions, and then I would come up with, where the heaviest amount of answers lay. And I saw people say, yeah, we really see you as such and such, and you tend to be really good at this, and I've seen you have a lot of experience at that, and some questions not just about me, also like, what do you think is more efficient in the world, or more effective, or is going to pay better, or is going to have a better future? Do you see the future of high tech or the future of science? So got a lot of info just from this little survey I did. And then that, along with the research I did on the schools, I contacted all the schools, I talked to people who manage the programs, and some other researchers and some other sports psychs doing what I wanted to do. Some of them just the field I wanted as well. I wanted originally to bring surfing to women in the Middle East because it was not very prevalent. So I was reaching out to surfers, and I heard what they had to say about their programs, and then I just, narrowed it down and started applying. So if I can have the funds, make sure I could afford it, that sort of thing. Yeah.
How did you establish connections with people? Like, what's a good
You
way
mean
of
with
going about
athletes,
it?
or?
Yeah, just like making connections in your field and stuff.
I post a lot of things, a lot of articles, I write a lot of stuff, and I repost interesting articles on my social media. So people will comment, and then if people comment on your stuff on wherever you post, engage in their comments. They took the time to read it, so they're already a captive audience. So if they say, oh, I agree with that, or whatever, tell them, yeah, I know, I agree with it too, and get in a little mini conversation in the comments with them. So they feel like they're heard, and then you really get that person that way. I seek out people in sports arenas, like different sports areas. I go to a lot of sporting, this is from Women's Week, but I usually have one of these on my wrist every week from some sporting event or another. Hang out at the expo, hang out at marathons, talk to athletes, talk to organizers, things like that. And then it helps to have a good network of other professionals. So if you know physical therapists or chiropractors, they have the same clientele that you would want. Get to know them and get friendly, and then say, look, we'll share each other's potential clientele. Sometimes they give me referrals, and I give them referrals. Yes.
So you work for yourself, right? You have your own company.
Yeah.
So why did you choose to do that rather than working with Forbes?
I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to run my own business so I could decide how I'm going to steer it, and I like talking one-on-one with people, so I want this kind of business where I'm going to engage one person, work with them for a few weeks, and get to know them deeply and ask them deep questions, and have that availability to them, and not work for somewhere where they're directing me. Now you need to do this, and now you need to do that, and now you need to go, or whatever. I wanted to do it for myself. Yes?
What's your favorite part of your job?
I love working with kids, and kids are hard to get to listen to you. They're always really distracted. When they listen and they hear something that you say, and then they go and they try the skill or whatever I suggest, and they do it well, they come back, and their parent or they also tell me, hey, we've been doing this and it works really well. That's my favorite part of the job. Something works for someone.
Do you normally go to the patients, or do the patients typically come to you? Like, where do you meet?
We usually go to the sport area. So if they're a figure skater, I'm at the rink. If they're a tennis player, I'm at the court. If there's no sports area available to go to, I will meet them in a coffee shop or in a park, depending on something like that. And try to be, actually I've done a newer thing that I've done lately is, you need to be confidential, right? It's psychology after all, and you want them to trust you and to be able to tell you some deep things that they need help with, and they don't want you going around telling everybody else what you heard. But if you're in a place where there's a lot of people around, a coffee shop, people can hear. So people are tense and they don't really want to speak up. So I've been taking people, I teach stand-up paddleboard, so I take people and we rent a paddleboard for them and for me. I give them a real quick, how do you do it, how do you stand up, and then we're out on the lagoon where nobody's around, and then we can have a session on the paddleboard. So, who wants to be an entrepreneur now? 'Cause you can do all kinds of stuff that you want, so.
Do the people that you see usually come to you like weekly or monthly? Like, do they have set up dates, or do they just kind of come whenever they need it?
We usually set it up weekly. This way they can get continual interaction. It's better for them because they stay more engaged. It's also better for me as the professional, because then my schedule is going to be set. So I know I'm going to have a client then, and I don't have to look for someone to fill that space. I know I'm going to get paid. It's important to know that you're on a regular schedule with your client, And that they're not just gonna say, you know, maybe you'll get some earnings this month, maybe you won't. Like that, you can't run a business that way. So I usually get people to agree to a couple of months of practice at a time, of working together, once a week or twice a week, whatever they want. You set up the frequency, and then they will pay a month in advance, and then we'll set up the dates. And that way, if you ever need to do scheduling for things that you offer, that way people lock into your schedule, then you have them. And if they've paid and they wanna change the date, it doesn't mess up your schedule. They've already paid you, you're fine. Then they'll call you and say, I can't make, you know, next Tuesday, can we make it Wednesday? And then you have the flexibility to say yes or no. But you have to make sure you include your source of income. It's how you're making a living, so you have to make sure that you get that and you're not running after it and that sort of thing. Yes.
How did you get exposed to psychology?
I guess it started with the golf. It was just my own idea. Then I was seeking out who did it. And I happened to have Terry Orlick. Have you guys heard of Terry Orlick? So he's one of the fathers, one of the founding fathers back in the 70s. He's from my city, from my university actually, back home. And I had a talk with him and he said, tell me about your field. So that's kind of how it happened. I wasn't exposed to it in a way of having anyone counsel me when I was an athlete. Although in gymnastics when I was a kid, there were a lot of Russian coaches, and Russia had sports psychology long before North America had it. So their athletes were formed already with psychologists, with a lot of team around them, not just their coach.
Does the job affect you like emotionally or mentally?
It does, and it can. Yeah, you have to be able to create a space for when you see your client, and you don't bring any of your stuff to that space. You come into that space, you work with them, you're mindful and listen to them, and then when you leave, you have to be able to, you know, you do your follow-up, and then you have to be able to turn off, because yeah, sometimes their situation is depressing or it's disturbing. You know, if someone is getting addicted to drugs or someone is really depressed, it hurts me. You know, I don't like to know about that. So you have to do things about it that you can do to solve it and help work on that, but then you have to go back to your own life and have your own energy around again. So, did I answer that in a way that was helpful? Yeah, it's a good question.
So if someone's like doing drugs or something and like hurting themselves in that way, like at what point do you have to like step in to like get other people involved versus something that you can just like talk through and like you don't have to involve anyone else?
Well, in the field of psychology, I'm not licensed, but I still go according to the ethics of those who are licensed, and you are obligated to let authorities know if someone is hurting themselves or hurting others, and if someone is being abused or abusing others. So alcohol or drugs or any kind of substance that is hurting themselves has to be reported, and I usually confer with another psychologist who's a licensed therapist and say, you know, what stage do how much information did I learn from this person to I need to turn around now and tell someone, and what stage are they at? Because some adults, some 20-year-olds, you know, if they're using drugs and they're addicted, I'm not sure what the age of legal age down here, where you can no longer tell a person you have to get turned in, you have to get rehab, you have to get help. I mean, at 18? Okay, so if they're over 18 and they don't want to rehab, there's nothing you can do about it. And at some point you might say, I don't want to continue to see you because you're hurting yourself and I can't treat you, like, you know. But in sport it's all doping, so they're not necessarily, they're addicted, but they're addicted because they want to do better, so they stay with the doping. And doping has its own set of rules, and you have to, if I ever find out if someone's doping, I tell them I'm going to let someone know, and I don't want to work with them. That's just so I can detach myself from that, but it's a conundrum, you know. So, yes.
What's the difference between the sports psychologist and I guess academic psychologist, like coursework, and what is
It's the same. There's there's a lot, like, we had additional courses in sports-specific stuff. And we had all the developmental psychology, cross-cultural, all the different history, theory, etc., counseling techniques, it's all the same. And then there's the whole body of research in sports psychology, which measures things that we talked about on the board. So, visualization for athletes, things like that. Yes.
So you know how you had the list of barriers that some people face?
Yeah.
What seems to be like, through your experience, the hardest one for people to overcome?
For athletes, you mean, or for
For
clients?
athletes.
Believing in themselves, that's huge. How can you get someone to believe in themselves? What's that?
Like pump them up.
Yeah, or point out, but that's kind of, they might see through that and say, but you're just pumping me up, right? You have to get really something that's going on and show them how they're good at something. And show them, here's proof that you've been doing well at this, and you've come through every time, you've succeeded in this, and you've come this far, et cetera, and you've got to show them real, true things. But that I would say is one of the toughest things for people. And then falling apart at competition. Like they've been practicing the three-pointer forever, and then they get there, and even if they have a routine and they have even a ritual, and they have whatever, they kiss the ball or whatever, it just doesn't go. Typically when you're nervous, you tense up, and then your muscles aren't as agile. So if you have practiced perfect form, it's when you're relaxed. If you're suddenly tense, your perfect form has got some tension, and it's not going to do quite what you want. So using relaxation, using yoga, using meditation, those things help a lot. It's kind of the new way of sports psychology. Even hockey and rugby and lacrosse teams are doing the meditation stuff. Even those big guys. Yes.
What has been your most difficult clients?
They're really fun to work with, actually, all my clients. They're determined, and they're really high, they want to function really high level. The most difficult client is the parent, I'd say, of the kids. I sometimes want to just take them and have a session with them alone. And some of them agree too. They're like, you know what, maybe we should just have our own session. I'm thinking, yes, leave your kid out of it. He's fine.
Have you or are you currently working with any professional athletes?
Yeah, I am in a couple of sports, not very run-of-the-mill sports, little off-the-beaten-track sports. I can't say anyone, but they are, they're I guess what you call the sports that are starting to come more and more into the Olympics. And they don't have a lot of support in those sports, so they're really, really grateful. And another area I want to mention is working with disabled athletes, the Challenge Athletes Foundation, and athletes with developmental disabilities, but particularly physically challenged athletes. There's a lot of work in that as well. I didn't mention that enough, but it's a huge field. They really need a lot of help. They need anyone they can get. So yes.
Do you work with like Paralympic athletes?
Not Olympic, but I've worked with challengers.
Like Paralympic.
Yeah, but I mean, not para at the Olympic level. I've worked with para, but not at the amateur level. So it would be great to work with Paralympians, but I've worked with competitors, visually impaired, and people who have paralysis, and people who have below the knee sort of prosthetic.
Oh my gosh, this was awesome. This energy in here was fantastic.
Thank
So
you
I just
all
have to
for your
say
questions.
thank you so much, Anna, for her time. Let's give it up to Anna, please. And on that note, could we do a big group photo, because it's part of the thank you that we do to share with Anna. So if I could have everyone stand up and gather around Anna. Anna probably in the front, and then students in the back. Thank you. We'll just do a group photo here. Actually, if we back up towards the PowerPoints. Yeah, we'll have to. If you can try to get yourselves in a tall students in the back.
Tallies in the front, shorties in the back.
Yep. Can you help me?
I have lots of tallies in here and lots of shorties.
You do. You have a mix.
Practice?
Oh, this is perfect. Good. I'd like you to be in it too. And I'm gonna send it to you. So. Oh wow, you guys, this is not your first time doing this. You know, you've got it right in. Okay, the rule is if you can see me, I can see you. If you're looking at someone's head, that means I can't see you. So, if you need to move yourself like this young lady in the back. Everyone knew. Okay, those of you, yeah, if you can squat down just a little bit. Okay, perfect. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take a few. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Woohoo. Thank you. Okay, it took like 5, 10. You know how it is. Thank you.
Thank you guys also for filming. I appreciate it.
Of course.
That's great. Are they gonna be able to send it to you then? Is that how it works?
Yeah, send me a file or
Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome.
excellent. Thank you. Oh, good. I'm glad. That